Dress your line. Prepare to march on. March on. Ready? Ready. Present your piece. Open pan. Give fire.
All right. Give us your name, rank, and serial number.
I'm Stan Wallman,
Okay.
currently captain of New Plimmoth Gard.
All right.
We don't have serial numbers yet.
Okay. Well, tell me a little bit about New Plimmoth Gard. What era is that?
Okay, New Plimmoth Gard is a reenactor group that models the initial citizen soldiers of the Plymouth colony. So when we say we're New Plimmoth Gard, we reenact the eras of about 1621 to 1646,
Okay.
representing the citizen soldiers that started out under Miles Standish.
Okay. How long has the group been going? How many years?
We've been going since 2012, so that's like 13 years now, 13, almost 14 years.
When did New Plymouth Gard hook up with Bourne Historical Society, or how did that?
I'm trying to think.
Do
It
you
was
remember?
in preparations for the 400th anniversary. That, and we were first invited probably 2015, 2014. We were first invited to come to Bourne.
Okay.
We originally came down with Salem Train Band and Yarmouth Minutemen were here. We like coming here. It's a beautiful, beautiful site, and it's really
is.
nice.
It is. What's the most appealing aspect of coming down here as New Plymouth Gard?
Well, you have a realistic 17th century building. That's a
Okay.
backdrop. It actually was a site of a Plymouth colony trading post. So there's actually some appropriate history involved, and it's a great location on the canal.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's
That's
very
beautiful.
There's if you're tired of talking to the people, you can wait for an oil tanker to go through.
Yeah,
You
that
get a lot
was
of different excitement.
Yeah. What's the most surprising thing to you about this area or reenacting the era?
Well, what I didn't realize when I first started this was I didn't know, hey, where can you get this stuff that looks like you're from the 17th century? And then I find out it's not all that hard. You can find it on the internet, several sites. There's different makers, different manufacturers. I was really surprised. And some of that has a root in the fact that as a hobby of reenacting in England, the people that do the English Civil War, which is 1637,
Okay.
they have a fleet load of vendors that satisfy that, which is applicable to us.
What would you want people to know, the public or kids, like?
Well, there's more to the Pilgrim story than they came over in 1620 and had
Stepped
the
on
first
this big
Thanksgiving.
rock. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
one first off didn't step on the rock, but that's a different
No.
stuff, different story. There's more to the story of settling North America than the Pilgrims came over on the Mayflower. They landed. They had a Thanksgiving. They were friends with the natives. There's much more to that story. There's much more things that happened with that colony. The hardships they went through, how tough it was to survive the first winter. And yes, the Native Americans did help that colony survive. Without them, there would not have been, Plymouth. Plymouth had gotten all the settlers in and started to disperse in the southeastern Massachusetts, and that Plymouth was almost a ghost town until 1646, when 3 ships of English
The
mariners,
pirates.
we called them pirates, came into town and actually rescued Plymouth from financial disaster by staying 6 weeks and spending bunches of money on ale and fish
Women.
and tobacco. And no, they couldn't buy women. It's a Puritan colony, you know that.
Oh, well, okay. I just,
Okay, you got 80,
we know.
80 sailors that have been in the Caribbean now for 2.5 years. They come to a Puritan
Puritan colony.
town, and they're not going to have much to do except drink. So the forefathers were smart enough to immediately put a tax on beer, whiskey, and wine, tobacco, and fishing. So
Okay.
that's how Plymouth Colony did not go the way of Jamestown, because the pirates came in 1646. Today's representation of the Plymouth Colony militia mustered at Aptucxet to go and participate in the Pequot War. And it took months to debate whether Plymouth would join Mass Bay in fighting the Pequots in Connecticut. So we mustered here to get ready to go. They did their drilling. There was a, kind of an open market kind of thing because there's a bunch of people here to have some activity. There's a little bit of a fair atmosphere. And by the time the ship that came to take them to Connecticut came, the Pequot War was over.
Ha.
So the Plymouth militia never went to Connecticut. They never fought the Pequots. So until 1675, the Plymouth armed militia never fought anybody until the King Philip's War. That's when their alliance ended with the Wampanoag.
Okay.
The children and grandchildren of the Pilgrims wanted more land, and that was
Yeah, and
one of
that's
the big
where the
events
trouble
that started
started.
that.
Okay. Thank
We're going
you.
to wrap that up.
Yeah.
People think this is a Spanish helmet,
That's what I was going to say.
They
Conquistador.
conquistadors.
Yeah, that's what that came to mind.
but it's not.
Yeah.
This is an Irish one.
Irish.
And the difference is they're all made by hand. So it could be Spanish, could be English. Because in these days, everybody wore this type of helmet because it was a good helmet. It kept the sun off you, the rain, and it protected you from blows of swords, pikes, and sticks and clubs and rocks and everything else that was on. But everybody, Hollywood, they all wear them because it's a good looking helmet.
Yeah, it is.
You know?
Very
Plus
striking.
it hides my face, so that's good looking too. Nobody can see what I really look like.
Mavis Robinson, and I'm the president of the Bourne Historical Society, and we're standing here in the Aptucxet Trading Post, the historic Aptucxet Trading Post, and this has been a spot that has been owned and operated by the Bourne Historical Society for over 100 years. So I'm a nice, just one
I
link
like
in
that.
the chain of
So the
people.
history of the history.
The history of the history, exactly.
itself,
Yes,
yes.
And yes, because the colonial revival movement in the late 1800s and the early 20th century, there's a sudden interest, particularly in New England history, and the forefathers and foremothers of our own society were very involved with that, and kind of got the Bourne Historical Society going.
So
Early stories.
when did the Historical Society get going?
1921. 1921. Yes. And the beginning of the society was basically the cellar hole that's beneath us was the start of the Bourne Historical Society. So in the late 1800s, archaeology was a brand new field, and these two cellar holes were discovered in this area that was known as Aptucxet. Aptucxet is a Wampanoag word that means little trap in the river. So Aptucxet probably referred to a fishing weir. We do know that it was the summer fishing ground for the Herring Pond Wampanoag people. So we know there's a place called Aptucxet, very well documented in Bradford's writing, and we know that the Pilgrims had a trading post. But what we know is this is generally the place. This is the piece of land.
Okay.
Right, over here to our right, there's a freshwater spring. Having a freshwater spring right next to a saltwater fishing source would have been the perfect formula for that fishing weir and that summer fishing grounds.
What would have been the two cellar holes you're talking about? What do they figure? What time period is that? Or they're just not sure?
The time periods, they've been dated. We know that they're very old. So
Okay.
at a minimum, they were either used as the trading post. The trading post had, very interesting history. It was first built in 1627 and functioned again as the Pilgrims' first trading post in order to trade not just with the local Wampanoags, but also with the Dutch in New Amsterdam to the south. They set up this spot. It's kind of the perfect sweet spot. I mean, I mentioned the spring, which is still here. Right up front is the Cape Cod Canal, but back in the day, the Cape Cod Canal was not there.
Yeah.
It was a little windy saltwater river. It was a brackish river that was later named the Manamet River. And then also this was on the Megantic Trail. This was on an already established trail and trade route for the Wampanoag people. So we know that the Dutch came through here. They've documented it and written about their encounters at Aptucxet with the Pilgrims.
The trading post, like say, this building we're standing in is the trading post.
Yes.
Is that basically the store?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And they might have cabins or tents that they lived in outside?
So the folks that would be living here, they would live in the store. So it was a post, but it was also a residence. There would be two people here at a time. And when we think about their community was Plymouth, which was just only 20 miles, about north there, but it took an awful long time to get there. The most valuable trading partners we had were those Wampanoag people who would be trading furs for, and as I have in my hand, I am holding a fathom of wampum. This fathom of wampum, this was a means of exchange. So this actually was money.
Okay.
This was used as money for that trilateral trade between the Dutch, between the English, and between the Wampanoag people. And it was actually the Dutch who kind of brought these beads to the, literally, physically brought them and sold them to the Pilgrims and said,
Okay.
we think your local folks are going to like these beads. Now, it took a little negotiation before the local folks really said, I don't know, is this really valuable? This is just made out of a shell that I can pick up at the beach. So there was a leap of faith on behalf of the Wampanoag people to believe and have faith in this form of currency. But once it was shown, today you give me some furs and I'm going to give you these wampum beads, but then when my ship comes in the spring, I'll trade you back some tools and you can hand me back those wampum beads. So after those first successful trades, it was accepted as that medium of exchange, and this was just as good as a dollar between the Wampanoags, the Pilgrims, and the Dutch. The latest that I'm so passionate about happens to be sassafras. Sassafras, which we're serving some sassafras tea here. Sassafras, it turns out, was the second most important cash crop from the colonies back to Europe. And when we think about what led all of that European exploration that kind of led to the discovery of America by Europeans, it was a pursuit of spices and a pursuit of a trade route to Asia for the spice trade. And then somebody bumped into America, discovered this new plant, a new spice, sassafras, which was not only something that added culinary texture, but also had high medicinal value.
Yes.
So it was something that became very popular in Europe even before the Pilgrims showed up here. So when the Pilgrims came here and saw all of these sassafras trees, that was one of the things that they filled up their barrels with and loaded ships to head back to England to pay off that debt. So sassafras was a very important trade good, which to me was almost forgotten. The sassafras tree was the pharmacy of the 1620s and also the pharmacy of the 1400s for the folks who were here well before Europeans ever set foot on this land. It was used, to cure so many ills. You would use it as a poultice on a wound. It was edible. And most famously, the bark of the root of a sassafras tree would be peeled off, boiled. It could be used for a dye, but could also be consumed, and it was consumed as a medicinal tonic, and then turned into the great American drink, root beer.
Thank you very, very much.
This is a couple hundred years old. Couple hundred years old. Beads became part of a trade good. To realize that the natives prior to things that totally transformed the native way of life. So, for example, there, a native a cooking pot. That's a small one. There are ones I've seen that are much bigger. But if you drop that, it breaks.
Well, it looks like it's made of clay, right?
Yeah, it's made of clay. It's fired clay. But they didn't have iron. So that's all they could produce. But if you drop it, it breaks. But here's a brass trade kettle. This is a small one. You could drop this all you want. It's not going to break. And when this eventually does wear out, you can cut it up and make jewelry. You can make arrowheads out of it. So it's got a secondary use. That breaks, you throw it in the trash heap.
I love this job. It's the greatest thing that ever happened to me in so many ways.
This is cool.
Whenever people do come in, I get to do what I love, which is talk about history.
What got you interested in this time period?
Well, I grew up in Massachusetts, so there's a lot of exposure to it in general just by living here, which is nice. The part of the town that I live in is literally called Old Bourne Village. I'm surrounded by history at all times, and I've always loved it since I was a kid. So for me, the thing that's the most interesting in here is the wampum beads.
The wampum.
Wampum beads are such a fascinating piece of the history at Aptucxet. Wampum, which was a sort of cultural, social capital for the Wampanoag. So the cool thing about those beads is they were all the same size, shape, and weight. So they could be strung up on a fathom. And a fathom is a word that a lot of people have heard, but a lot of people don't know what the measurement is. A fathom is a 6-foot man's wingspan, which is essentially 6 feet.
A different world. Pikes are only for the purpose of learning some basics of soldiering. They will do us no good in the woods of New England or New York.
What's the question you get most often?
The serious answer, the question I get asked most often is, what was so valuable about beads? I get
Yeah.
asked that a lot. And the answer is that they were really difficult to make. I mean, it could take up to 6 hours to make a single bead. They were made out of the purple bands of shells, which some quahog shells don't even have a purple band. And some of the purple bands can be very light, and so you can't really make a bead out of it. And of course, it was a labor-intensive process. So it was worth something because of how hard it was to make. And up until the 1840s, actually, if you were a Native American, you could actually exchange wampum beads with Harvard University in order to pay your tuition.
Oh, wow. That's good.
Is an anecdote that I've heard before. And because of that, Harvard University has the world's largest collection of wampum beads.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Michael Heenan. I'm a private in the New Plymouth Guard of Plymouth, which is 1620 to 1640 reenactment society, or reenactment unit.
How long have you been doing that?
I joined on the second meeting they had, so I've been doing it probably 13, this could be my 13th or 14th year. I enjoy being with all the people that are with me in the New Plymouth Guard, and I enjoy being with them. They bring a lot of perspective and history to the New Plymouth Guard.
Was there anything about once you joined this group in this era that surprised you? Ooh, I didn't think of that before.
Oh, I've learned a lot since I've joined. Everyone, again, knows so much more than I do of this particular era. And I learned from everyone, from the captain all the way down to, like me, the lowest private. I thought I was historically accurate in a lot of things, but I was really average. And I've gained in knowledge in the 14 years that I've been with the New Plymouth Guard. This is probably one of the best reenactment units that I've ever been in, and I've been in a lot since 1972. I'm a historical reenactor. I reenact everything from Imperial Rome to Desert Storm, and this is one of the most fun. And I think it has a lot to do with firing my matchlock, which even though I was in the Army for 35 years and fired all the weapons you could, the matchlock is a very interesting firearm.
What does your wife think about all this reenactment?
My wife really finds this fascinating. She enjoys everybody that's in it and wishes she could be at more events. And she likes me doing this. It keeps me alive. And plus, it gets me out of the house so she can be alone for a while.
Yay! What's your least favorite aspect of doing this?
Sometimes it's the heat. And sometimes it's standing around for hours doing nothing. But that's part of being in the military. Like I said earlier, I was in the Army for 35 years, and a lot of downtime. But that's everywhere. There's really not that much I don't like about it, except when I'm not getting fed.
So, any last thoughts?
I think that if anybody is interested in the early colonial history of Massachusetts, and especially of Plymouth, this would be a good venue for them to think about. Look up the New Plymouth Guard. We have a website.
Okay, let's eat.